Folks, it was 70-0 on Saturday. If you missed the score against Arkansas Pine Bluff, unfortunately for the Hogs, not too many Arkansas Pine Bluffs on the schedule.
You're not lying. Yeah, they got a tough one this weekend going up against Oklahoma State down at their place. So you're right. No more UAPBs.
But I'll say this, Ty, and then you can fill in the blanks. At least they showed up against an inferior opponent, and they did exactly what you're supposed to do. They just completely curb stomped them.
Yeah, they're, in the post-game show, of course, it's always exciting. Arkansas does, like you said, they covered the spread and then some. There were definitely plenty of positives. I mean, of course there are when you play a team like UAPB, and I have had to tell people in the Tuss Talk Discord and in the live chat on Tuss Talk YouTube to just pump the brakes. They're not going 10-2, 11-1, but there's certainly it's good to see them execute. It's good to see them score well on some of the analytics when you're looking at like PFF. It's good to see these things, and they did pass the eye test. Part of me wishes they had played maybe at least a group of 5 school, right? Maybe someone a little bit more up the totem pole as far as difficulty. But unfortunately, I think that is probably one of the negatives is that or maybe not a negative, just one of the big question marks is what did we really learn about Arkansas? And the truth is not a lot other than we know they're going to be fast. We know they're going to score. They're going to put up points. I feel like that was already kind of a thing before UAPB, going 10 for 10 on all drives, all touchdowns. The only team to do that and the first team in Arkansas to do that ever. I mean, it was incredible. The largest spread. And you think about all the bad teams they have played over the years. I think if I heard this correctly, they haven't won a game of that margin since like 1913, since like around the time of the Titanic sinking. So, I mean, there's that, I guess. But again, we just didn't. I don't know that we really learned much, and that's the question. Going into this Oklahoma State game, who has more film to break down? Who made more mistakes that it's gonna be pointed out in last weekend's, or for Arkansas last Thursday, for Oklahoma State Saturday. Who has the most film to go back and go, okay, here's where we were challenged. Here's what we need to work on. Arkansas didn't get that. Oklahoma State did, and that is something to consider if you're an Arkansas fan.
No doubt about that. South Dakota State was Oklahoma State's opponent in week 1, and they distanced themselves in the second half 44-20, but it was a competitive game throughout the first half into the second half before they were able to do so. Mm-hmm. So again, I'm sure they've got their players' attention. And like you say, from a tactical standpoint, when you win 70-0 and you score touchdowns on, did you get that, folks? 10 consecutive drives, then wow, there's not a whole lot to correct out there. But with Oklahoma State, obviously they will work on those issues. But the two teams get together in Stillwater. So was there anything that you can take from this in regards to anybody stand out to you?
Well, I don't know about any one player. I thought Nico Devier, the defensive end, he's in a battle with Anton Jukic, the transfer out of Albany, who, by the way, according to PFF, was a huge get for Arkansas if you're just looking at PFF numbers. Which we all know those numbers are unlikely to carry over into SEC play. But I thought both of them played pretty well. In fact, I was looking at PFF and both those guys kind of, not tremendous games. They were kind of sharing snaps. I think a little bit we saw them on the field at the same time. We didn't see Landon Jackson play much. I don't think he had but about 25 snaps. So it was good to see those guys still be able to apply a little bit of pressure and do their thing in the run game. I thought both of them looked pretty good. Offensive line, Carmona, left tackle, got, I guess, co-offensive lineman of the week in the SEC. And you think about all the scrubs that everybody played for their first matchup, that's not bad. Now, Did Arkansas play the worst of the bunch? Probably. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how we really know that just yet, but the odds are likely that was probably one of the worst opponents that any SEC team played. Again, I don't know how we really know that yet. Time will tell, but that's still pretty impressive. I thought, and I know the ultimate questions about Talon Green. And listen, he did get off to a slow start, but his numbers kind of stand out a little bit just when you dive in a little bit deeper. Like his under pressure, he was 100% under pressure. He completed 2 of 2 there. When he was blitzed, that was the only area where he kind of struggled. He was 1 of 3 at 33% for 9 total yards. But for the most part, I mean, he was completing. He was really good over the middle. From 9 yards in, he was 7 for 7, which is good to see. He's not afraid to. He didn't start off great over the middle. When you look at his numbers between 10 and 19 yards, he was actually 3 of 7. A lot of that was early. I think one of those was a drop. But there's some things that kind of stand out for him. Of course, as a runner, we've been telling people all spring and fall camp, this dude could tuck it and run. That's exactly what we saw him do. He showed off a little bit of athleticism. And here's the thing. I truly, and I think this is probably pretty obvious considering their opponent, we know they didn't open up that playbook very much. They don't want to give away too much to Oklahoma State. So that's going to be an advantage for Arkansas. I think Oklahoma State did have to open up their playbook on both sides of the ball early on against their opponent because they played a much tougher opponent. So they did have to open their playbook up a little bit more. So that'll give Arkansas maybe a little bit of an advantage. We'll see. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I think the biggest thing that stands out, maybe not just one player, although TJ Metcalf in the secondary, I liked his play, but it was the 10 for 10 and then shutting them out. I mean, it was just as close to a perfect game as you could get, as one could get. That's about as close as you're ever going to get. You shut the opponent out and you score touchdowns on every single drive. I mean, that's actually kind of absurd no matter the opponent.
So we've got Arkansas as a 7.5-point dog in the road at Oklahoma State. My first inclination is grab points on any game, most games. And then to this game, I've been saying it all off season. This game's a touchdown plus. I'm probably going to take those points because I don't think there's much separation between those two teams. I will say this, that Oklahoma State, my first thought when it comes to the Cowboys is rushing champion from last year, Ollie Gordon, a top 5 to 10 offensive line in the country. They are going to mash. They are going to come right at that Arkansas defense. So it's the Hogs' defensive front up to the challenge.
That's a good question because my concern is I don't want to take anything away from Oklahoma State. I mean, listen, they've got like 18 starters coming back or something. The quarterback's like 35 years old. I don't know. They got Ollie Gordon, who is one of the top 5 backs in the country. This is one of those where I would argue Arkansas probably does have the talent advantage when you just look at, pull up any star map, right? Arkansas is going to have more stars compared to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State usually lucky to finish in the top 35, top 40 in recruiting. Arkansas is just a little bit ahead of them. It's not a big gap, but it is there. So, and I do think Arkansas will have that advantage in terms of talent, but how much, I don't know. With Oklahoma State being at home, that's always tough. And with all that experience back, that's going to be tough. And I don't know. I wasn't really blown away by Ollie Gordon. And someone in your chat said that Wet Blanket says Ollie. No, hold on. Oklahoma State didn't have to open up the playbook because they were in control the whole game. Wasn't any reason to. Okay, well, they went into halftime with an 11-point lead. Yeah, I think they opened up the playbook a little bit. I think there was certainly – I don't think they were ever panicking. I don't think they ever thought they were going to really lose that game. But I do think – I watched them a little bit. I have friends that are Oklahoma State fans, and a lot of what I saw was stuff that I saw last year. They're not afraid to bubble it. They're not afraid to draw it, and they're not afraid to screen it, and they're not afraid to go over the top when they think you're biting on Ollie. That's what they did. That is their bread and butter. And Gundy, in my opinion, I don't know if there's a coach that does more with less than Gundy at Oklahoma State. I got a lot of respect for that program. you know, T. Boone Pickens dropped off quite the bank to that university, and they may not have the regional power of Oklahoma or Texas A&M, but he has built a very respectable program. He's been there for 20 years. He's got the experience. They've been in these games before. They have lost some confusing games. You look at last year, some odd losses. But I wasn't, again, going back to Ollie Gordon, 3.9 yards per carry on 27 carries. And again, a lot of what I saw was stuff that I'd seen them do last year. Now, I'm not saying they opened up the entire playbook, but I wasn't blown away by Oklahoma State's run game. I just wasn't. As a team, they ran for 3.3. Bowman, who's kind of sneakily athletic. I was impressed with Bowman. I was very impressed with Bowman, actually. I thought he delivered some very catchable balls where only his receivers could come down with them. Their offensive line and their run game, and maybe that's what we're missing. That's the part of the playbook they didn't open up, and maybe they didn't want to show too much. I'm sure they were subbing guys out late in the game on the offensive line. I think Gordon will eat. I think he's going to have a great year. But I expected a little more out of the run game in week 1, but I think they're gonna be just fine. And Arkansas might be the first team to get the taste of that.
Yeah, Wet Blanket is always reminding us that Ollie Gordon is the best running back in college football. And then I quickly come back with one of the best running backs in college football. Just because he ran for the most yard doesn't mean he's the best.
That's right.
3.9 yards per carry against South Dakota State isn't necessarily a check mark in his column. I kind of like Omari and Hampton with North Carolina. They did have to keep Alan Bowman in the entire game. They didn't get a chance to rest him at all, unless maybe they just handed the ball off. I don't know what was going on in the fourth quarter. These receivers are good for Oklahoma State.
They are.
Rashad Owens, Deshaun Stribling, he's a transfer. Those guys have been in the program for a long time. Brendan Presley's been their best wide receiver for a few years. So, their offense is really good.
Yeah, it is. It is really good. And again, chat's reminding us that they're an 8.5-point favorite. Yeah, they're Oklahoma State. They're ranked. Arkansas's coming off a 4-8 year. Of course they are. Arkansas just played UAPB. We don't know anything about Arkansas. I agree. I think Ollie is a top 5 running back. He is very impressive. However, 2 of his best games were against bottom 20 run defenses in the country. You know, I was doing the research preseason. I mean, he's pretty good at, I'm not going to say padding stats, but they're pretty good at getting junk yards in junk time. And that's kind of what maybe that's what they were trying to do, bump those rushing numbers up. I can't imagine Gunn doing that just for the sake of
not a knock against the Big 12, is it, Ty?
It is, because, I can't, I just don't think highly of that conference. Again, I would ask you this, and I'm actually glad you brought me on and we're talking about Oklahoma State. If Ollie Gordon, and let's just take this whole offense, including the head coach Gundy and the guy behind it, put them in the SEC, Ollie Gordon is still a really good back.
Sure.
I don't think he's a Heisman candidate. I just don't think he is with the gauntlet of the SEC. No way. I just don't. This conference is good at knocking those guys down a peg. Now, it may not be the defensive conference that it was, 7 or 8 years ago, but it is still a very strong defensive conference, and they win battles in the trenches in this league.
I would have to review and study up on some offensive lines, because that's the part that people don't necessarily look at, which is, of course, probably most important. But off the top of my head, I'll take Alabama's offense, LSU, Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss, absolutely. Maybe Missouri.
You're talking just offensive lines over Oklahoma State?
I'm talking offenses.
Oh, offense.
Their offense.
Yeah, and I'm not, I am. Yeah, I
forgot Oklahoma and Texas. I'll take both of them.
I am taking shots at the Big 12. I have no respect for that conference. I want them to be better. I'm pretty well noted on this show as I just don't think that highly of that conference. However, Oklahoma State is good, and that offense is good. I think they would be competitive in this league, and this is going to be a fascinating matchup on Saturday at 11 o'clock in the morning. and I will answer your question. I do have Arkansas winning this game. I had Arkansas winning this game before the season started. I haven't really changed my mind on that much. Maybe I'm wrong. If the scenarios that play out for me are either Arkansas by a little, Oklahoma State by a little, or Oklahoma State by a lot. Those are the three things on the table. I don't think if Arkansas wins, they're going to go down there and beat the hell out of them. I think it'd be a high scoring, 30 or 45 to 39 kind of game. Only because of Taylor Green's athleticism. I don't know about his passing. I'm still kind of waiting to see what he can do in the pass game. But yeah, I think Arkansas, just from a talent perspective, they're better. But Oklahoma State has advantages, being at home with all that experience. But I also look back last year and every year that Gundy's been there, just about, they always lose games that are just, what the hell happened? And maybe this is one of those moments. I don't know. I know it's SEC. They've got a grudge, I think, against some of these schools. Everyone's got a grudge against the SEC, rightfully so. That's certainly going to play into it a little bit. But yeah, I like Arkansas, but not by a lot. I think it's going to be close, and I'm looking forward to it. It's whether I'm right or wrong, I don't care. You and I get paid to do the same thing no matter what. So, but I think it's going to be fun, and I can't wait for the post game. Assuming Arkansas wins, and if they lose, it'll still be entertaining.
What's our game time and network situation?
It's 11 o'clock on ABC.
Okay, noon for me.
Yeah, noon for you.
ABC. Okay, it will be one of my games of choice then. It will be on one of my 3 screens, and I will probably do some instant analysis on it.
It's a coin flip for me. I have several for Arkansas this year, but I leaned on that coin in the favor of Arkansas. Neutral field or at home, I would probably take Arkansas majority of the time. But again, we just, I made that prediction before the season started. And again, post UAPB, I still don't know if we'd know anything about Arkansas. That's the downside of scheduling a UAPB week 1. Like, what do you really know about your team?